Two balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Welcome up, Reyes Taylor.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by Matt Moreno. Matt, we're talking Universal DH. This should be a fun one. I know you and I disagree on this. We're also going to end the show with 5 Dodgers from the last 30 years that maybe would have benefited from a Universal DH. Some fun names on my list, at least. We haven't shared those yet. But here's the deal. There is no collective bargaining agreement yet, of course. But one thing that has become clear is there are 2 pieces of that have essentially been agreed upon. First is the Universal DH will come, and the second is some form of a draft lottery. Today we're talking Universal DH. It's coming to the National League. We've sort of expected this. There was a chance it was going to happen a couple years ago. It didn't. It's here now. I love it. Matt doesn't love it. Let's talk about it, Matt. Give me your best argument for why you don't love the Universal DH.
It's not the best argument, but I do have to just, in the full disclosure, a lot of it is, I grew up obviously watching National League Baseball and following the Dodgers. Yeah. And so that's just the style that I've been introduced to. I imagine had I grown up, maybe on the East Coast following an American League team with the DH, I probably would be on the completely other side of the fence. All that being said, I think when you add the DH, it just removes a lot of the strategy from the game. And I know Dave Roberts is somebody who's been criticized for his pitching decisions and whatnot, but to me, that's part of baseball is, needing to figure out, okay, do I double switch? When do we maybe take out the pitcher? So, I was resigned. I will say in 2020, I grew to accept the DH. Yeah. I recognize that the Dodgers specifically are a team that stands to really benefit because 1, they have the financial resources to fill that spot with a quality bat. And 2, related to that, their roster is just deep and they can, anytime you can get an extra quality player in the lineup, it makes sense over a starting pitcher who's hitting. My preference would have been, and it doesn't seem like this will be the case, and it's something that Andrew Friedman floated, maybe they would do a DH kind of with a hook, though once the starting pitcher comes out, then you lose your DH. Yeah. That's something I would have preferred. I'm also kind of, I guess annoyed maybe is the best word, that they had it in 2020. They couldn't get it in place last season, and now here we are probably, with the next CBA, it's going to be in place again. So it's just like, why did we go back in 2021? We should have just kept it the entire way through.
Yeah, hold the thought on the hook idea because that's actually intriguing to me. Here's my pro DH argument. Okay, first of all, there's going to be less bunting. Nobody likes bunting. There's going to be less of it. There's going to be less intentional walks. Nobody likes intentional walks. We're going to have less of that. I'm thinking of, was it the Padres or the Giants that we played, and it was like a 15-inning game, and it was like we're just intentionally walking 3 dudes in a row to get to the pitcher. Like, that was an awful game to watch. So I understand when we talk about the hook that maybe that comes back a little bit, but I can't stand that. And it's like, I just don't like seeing people that aren't very good at something do it. Pitchers can't hit. Obviously, it's the injury risk, so we can make that argument, but I just don't like seeing guys that hit 0-90 get up there. Max Scherzer was like 0 for 52 or something this last year. And yes, somebody's going to say, Greinke and Kershaw, whatever. Yes, there are some pitchers who can hit, but can we point out that even the pitchers who, quote, can hit are like 220 hitters and not 120 hitters? They're terrible at it. I want to see better players do better things. As a Dodger fan, of course, I'm partially biased. Of course, the Dodgers are going to benefit. You look at their roster right now, they have 9 offensive players who all deserve to be playing every day, and they have 8 spots. Well, guess what? The DH comes. Now they have 9. So I think this is good. I like it. I think it's going to make the game more exciting. I understand the fear of a loss of strategy, but I would point out even in the World Series, when there is a DH in American League parks, there's still a lot of pinch hitting. There's still guys that are platooning. There's still guys that are going to be swapped. So I think there's some of that. But let's talk about this hook idea. So I forget who came up with it. I believe maybe it was Jason Stark. It was some baseball writer, so apology for ever I'm forgetting it. But the idea is exactly what you said, that you would have your universal DH only as long as your starting pitcher was in the game. And as soon as your starting pitcher came out of the game, then there was a spot open in the lineup where the reliever was. And there's probably some mechanics of, can you move the DH into a position, etc. The idea being this would prevent the use of openers, which I'm sure, again, something not everybody really loves. And it would incentivize a team to keep a starting pitcher in a game longer, which would shorten the length of these games, etc., etc. I actually like that idea because it basically gets your pitcher out of, like, let's say 2 at-bats. You save your starting pitcher from making 2 at-bats. You get 2 better at-bats. And then you still have a little bit of the strategy down the road where you can swap some guys in. Now, of course, it still opens you up to the 13th inning, the relief pitcher coming up to hit. But I suppose at the end of the day, the infrequency of that sort of offsets all this stuff. So I actually really like that idea. I prefer the universal DH in any form, but if you gave me the choice, I think I would prefer that. It sounds like you would too.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, realistically, logistically, like you just said, there would be a lot of moving parts where they'd have to figure out how that DH spot sort of works and if it gets moved and whatnot. So
yeah,
maybe, the CBA obviously is for 5 seasons. So maybe the next new one will have something like that. Hope maybe.
Jeez Louise, Matt. I'm already having like tremors thinking about the next CBA after having like lived through this traumatic stress of this CBA. So here we go.
Definitely. I mean, it'll take, some years of sort of planning maybe to figure that out. And so hopefully down the line, that's something we'll see instead of just a straight universal DH, or maybe they'll realize we actually need to go back to pitchers hitting because, when Clayton Kershaw does get a hit, it's exciting. When Hyunjin Ryu hits his home run, everybody goes crazy. So that can be fun too.
Yes. Okay, so here's sort of the fun angle I wanted to take on this. Is looking back on the past, let's say 30-ish years. That's because Matt and I, those are the years that we've watched Dodger baseball. Who are the guys that would have benefited most from the Dodgers as far as having a universal DH goes? Now, the loose premise that I threw out there, and you can move this however you want, is guys who were good offensively and bad defensively. Basically, who are the guys that you would love to have kept in the lineup, and even loved even more getting them out of the field in some capacity. So I've got mine ranked 1 through 5. Matt, I'll let you go with your top choice first, and we'll alternate your number 1, my number 1, so on. So,
oh man, okay.
Who did you have at the top of your list?
I did more chronological order, but off the top of my head, first would be Matt Kemp.
Okay.
And it's more like obviously kind of later on in his career because he was very good before the injuries unfortunately set in.
Yeah.
And also a lot of that pick is taking into account when he returned to the Dodgers unexpectedly and he was hitting really well and they were trying to, kind of hide him out in the outfield.
Yeah.
So he's somebody who I think his career maybe would have been prolonged a little bit had the universal DH been in place.
So Kemp's not number 1 on my list, but he's high on my list. I looked this up. Now, defensive wins above replacement is a very busted stat, but I think it helps. His career as a Dodger was negative 71.7 wins above replacement. Now, again, those numbers are way inflated. The point is he wasn't very good defensively. And to your point, in 2018, he had an OPS over 800. He hit 21 home runs. So he would have been the quintessential designated hitter. Unfortunately, 2019-20, I don't even know if he was in the league. Whenever the last 2 seasons he was in the league have been really, really bad. So Matt Kemp will not be making a return. But Kemp, I think, is a good choice. He's high on my list again. Number 1 for me, this one was actually fairly simple for me. It's Manny Ramirez. I know his career as a Dodger wasn't very long, but my goodness, he was terrible defensively, and my goodness, he was amazing offensively. He is the quintessential designated hitter. So as much as, again, it's like the universal DH. Do we love watching Manny try and chase down a ball and dive for a ball and like sort of labor? Of course. But much like we don't want pitchers hitting, we don't want Manny fielding. So Manny Ramirez is number 1 for me. I'll go number 2 just because we're here. Matt Kemp was number 2 on my list. So Matt, who do you have number 2 on your list behind Kemp?
Number 2, I'll go Gary Sheffield.
Okay.
I think it's kind of similar to Kemp, a prolific hitter, obviously, throughout his entire career. Defensively, maybe not bad, but not somebody who you would say, yes, I fully trust him out there. And kind of, same kind of thought. I think had the DH been around the National League, it just would have been beneficial for his career.
Yeah, he's a Manny Ramirez light, I think. Probably a little worse offensively, a little better defensively. Again, Sheffield is in my top 5 as well. I'll go number 3 here. Eric Kiros gets number 3 for me. This is another guy that did not have positive numbers in the defensive wins above replacement categories. A little bit stiff, not a ton of movement going on for Kiros, but obviously a very good hitter. So Eric Kiros is number 3 on my list. Who do you got number 3?
I'll keep it at first base and go Steve Garvey.
Okay.
Struggled a little bit at third, tried him in the corner outfield. He did finally stick at first, and obviously it was a successful run because he was part of the longest running infield that the Dodgers had that still obviously holds an MLB record. But those growing pains to get there maybe could have been a little bit smoother had the DH been around for him.
Fair. Okay, I've got Sheffield number 4 on my list, so we've kind of discussed him. Who do you have as number 4 on yours?
Number 4, I'll go Andre Ethier.
Okay.
And again, for me, it's sort of in the same light as like a Matt Kemp and a Gary Sheffield. He was good enough defensively in the outfield, I think. As he got a little bit older in his career, then naturally you saw some decline, but he could still hit pretty well. So I think, again, had the DH been around, Ethier would have been, somebody good that the Dodgers could still have in their lineup.
I can't wait till somebody goes on Ethier's baseball reference page and looks at 2011 and reminds us that he won a Gold Glove.
Yeah.
If only in saying, you know what, just watch the video. Watch the video. I think Kemp was the same way. I mean, Kemp was a very good defensive player at one point. Ethier, again, he was fine. I don't think anybody would necessarily go to the mat saying Ethier was a great defensive player, but I think that's a fair one. So that's number 4 on your list. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so number 5 on my list, I've got a tie, and I think these guys are very similar, and we're going to modern era. I've got a tie between Jock Peterson and A.J. Pollock as 2 guys that I think benefit. Both of them, you could make arguments, aren't terrible. I mean, I think Jock, it always looked worse than it actually was. He kind of was in the right spots. And again, I think the Dodgers coaching staff helped both of these guys start in the right place, which goes a long way towards making sure you end up in the right place. But I think both of these guys are offensively, they bring way more to the table offensively than they do defensively. Probably Jock more so than Pollock, but Jock's also more of a platoon guy. So I've got a tie there between Jock Peterson and A.J. Pollock for 5th on my list. Who you got in your last spot?
I also had Jock last.
Okay.
So for a lot of the reasons you just kind of covered, and I will say an honorable mention, and I was kind of going back and forth between whether I would pick Jock or Carl Crawford.
Yeah.
Because when the Dodgers traded for him, again, like he was still
okay.
Awful. He was still okay, like decent in the outfield. I'll leave it at that. But he still had a little bit of speed as well, and he had a little bit of pop in his bat, and so had the DH been around, the Dodgers could have just put him into that rather than left field.
See, my problem with Crawford is I think he was not very good offensively in his time at the Dodgers. His first season, I'm looking back at the stats now. His first 2 years, he hit 283 and then hit 300. But it was 2015 and 2016 were far worse than that. So I've got one honorable mention for you. That's Zach Greinke. I think Zach Greinke deserves some love as an honorable mention DH. What do you think? I just made the case against pitchers hitting, but Zach Greinke?
I'm not going to let you get away with this one because you just spent the past 5 minutes telling me why pitchers shouldn't be hitting.
There's exceptions,
The entertainment value with that would definitely be off the charts. I mean, Greinke is, a good hitter. He's pretty disciplined. Good bat to ball skills for a pitcher. So in a pinch, if a position player needed a rest day and you had Zach Greinke doing nothing, go let him pinch it be the DH for you.
Yeah, Rich Hill maybe too. Just if we're just going sheer entertainment value, I think Rich Hill maybe is a DH. That'd be a fun one. It's like the end of the season, a meaningless game, and you just let Rich Hill be your DH. Be nice.
Yeah, that'd be like the final day of the regular season when a player is managing the team anyway because
Exactly.
There's nothing like the division is wrapped up and the game doesn't mean anything. So yeah, Rich Hill can be your DH for that day.
Okay, folks, let us know below. I'm sure we've missed somebody. I'm sure we've offended you by telling you that Manny Ramirez wasn't good at playing defense. So give us somebody we missed in the comments below. Who's a guy from the last 30-ish years of Dodger baseball that would have benefited from a designated hitter spot? I'm sure there's names. Mike Piazza may be a guy that would have benefited. I know he wasn't amazing behind the plate, but obviously offensively he brought a lot to the table. So that's Matt Moreno. My name's Jeff Spiegel. As always, we appreciate you joining us. Check out DodgerBlue.com. DodgerBlue1958 on social media. And, of course, subscribe, ring the notification bell here as well. We appreciate you watching. We'll see you next time.